jury.
It looks like one. Sorry for the delay, folks. I got caught up in all the cases. You may proceed. I'm sure. Are you ready to do what you wanted to do?
Yes. Very quick, exhibit 143 back up. You can just leave the lights on and step down if you would. You have a chance during the break to go back and review the documentation that you used to produce this exhibit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you now walk again the jury through this?
Okay, this is actually a sent text message. It's entry 61, but it's to the person listed in a phone book of Amy Parks. So as it was sent on July 24, 2014 at 6:44 p.m. And the message is just home.
And that's Donnie VanCallis' phone?
Yes, a number.
But it's to
that number.
To that number, which you had indicated was the number given to you for James VanCallis?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Sheik.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Let's talk about a few basic things along the lines of what you talked about. When you looked at these things, these texts and so forth like that, when you indicated that you can give somebody a name, a label, right? Like that Amy Parks label that we just saw?
Yes.
That was found on Donnie VanCallis' cell phone, correct?
Correct.
So that's how he chose to identify calls coming in from James VanCallis,
From
correct?
that number, yes.
Okay. So that doesn't necessarily mean that James did anything to his phone to make it appear like that, correct?
What do you mean by that?
Well, he didn't. It's not like he said, make my number appear as Amy Parks. That's just
Oh,
what Donnie
correct.
chose to do, correct?
Correct.
And doesn't necessarily mean that James even knows that his number comes up like that, correct?
No. Correct.
And it's not uncommon for people, sometimes they're advised, like instead of putting home and work, just put something else, because if your phone should fall in the wrong hands, you don't want somebody to know all your information, right?
That could be a reason, yes.
Okay, and so sometimes, well, I don't know if anything would explain Amy Parks, but the bottom line is that in terms of, it's not uncommon for people, instead of labeling their home number home, they might just label it their address or something else, so for the same reason, like if somebody gets their phone, they don't know where their home is.
I don't know if I'd classify it's not uncommon. I could see that it could be done. I don't commonly see people putting wrong names in phones. I might see nicknames, but not necessarily a name that appears for somebody else.
Okay, and if you see people that are, if you know people that are from multiple, if you know like 4 mics, and you know one that works furnaces, one that's maybe a mechanic, one that's a buddy, you might put a notation next to it, or just furnace mic or something, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's really for your own edification, for the person whose phone it is, and not the caller, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of these searches and so forth that you look at, I think you indicated that when somebody searches for something, some other things pop up as well, right? Like some of the YouTube searches, you said may have popped up on their own, correct?
Right, they pop up as a result of your search.
As a result of your search, and also same with other searches, I think excuse the language, the Kick-Ass website, and then the bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff, correct?
Correct, that could
Okay,
be
so that
a
would be-
result.
I'm sorry?
That could be a result of the search. It comes up and you're interested, so you click on it.
Okay. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're making 8,000 searches. It means you made a search and some suggestions came, and then maybe you clicked on that and that caused even more to come up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in those searches that you saw, you have no way of knowing who actually made those searches, correct?
That is correct.
And did you say that that computer had a password that you were provided, or did it not have a password?
It indicates it was password protected for the user to log in, but I was not provided with a password.
So how did you log in? You had
For
no
our
ways?
tools that we use, we don't go through and log in as a user. The computer's never actually turned on. We make a copy of the actual hard drive in the computer, and then the original hard drive is put away back in the computer, never touched again, and we work from a copy. The software we have will then look at the information that's on that drive without ever logging in as a user. Well, we don't do that. It's not done.
Okay, you knew what this case is about, right? You were given some briefing as to what this case is about, correct?
Yes.
And that's why you were asked to look for shoes, videos of motorcycles, correct?
Correct.
And so you did a thorough search, and those texts that you saw are all that we have, correct?
Those texts are from the cell phone, not the computer.
From the cell phone, that's right, from the cell phone. And as far as, well, those searches, whether the searches are from the computer, right?
Searches are from the computer,
Right, yeah,
yes. The
I'm sorry,
Internet
yeah.
evidence finder results were all from the
Right,
computer.
that's what I meant to say, I misspoke.
Okay.
The searches that were done on the computer, was there any more for the relevant period that we haven't brought up before the jury, or was that what you found, what you indicated?
Those were the ones that I thought could have anything to do with what was going on. There were other searches, but nothing that was relevant.
Okay, and none of those had any, first of all, I think a lot of them seem to talk about a younger woman, correct?
Some of them do, yes.
If the person that is doing the searches allegedly is 32 years old, younger could be 25 to that person, right?
Sure, it's in the eyes of the beholder. Who knows what it means?
Exactly. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything nefarious, correct?
I wouldn't know.
Okay, there were no searches on there how to kidnap anybody, were there?
Not that I saw, no.
Were there any searches on there how to rape anybody?
No, not that I saw.
How to murder anybody?
No,
How to murder somebody and get away with it?
no, nothing like that.
How to entice anybody?
I'm not sure if entice would fit under some of those searches. I guess
Well,
that's
some
in...
of the YouTube videos that popped up, right? Sounded like how
Yeah, they were clicked on or whatever, I guess. It may have been inferred that was enticing, I'm not sure.
But you didn't see any searches that indicated any sort of illegal activity per se, did you?
No, not just what you received.
And I think most of those searches were on, it seemed to me, right on St. Patrick's Day, right on March 17, March area. Do you remember? Would you
There
like
was
to-
July, there were other dates and stuff too.
Right,
They were
they
all
come-
over the place.
They come closer to, but they start, a lot of them are on March, right? This whole thing.
There was some
of-
March, yeah.
Okay. And that photograph that we saw, I think that was the last exhibit, I think, number 150 was the motorcycle. You got that from the computer or the cell phone? Computer. Now, did you determine where that photograph originated, how long it had been on there, what the date it was or anything?
It is included with the FTK report, but as far as long as it's been on the computer, you can never say that. You can tell you the date that it was placed there possibly. But dates and times are always relative. When it comes to a computer, you never know for sure the dates and times because it's so easy for a user to change those. So I always, with a grain of salt, these are the dates that are indicated. It doesn't mean that that is definitely the date that was placed there. You could easily go in, change the date and time, save any article to a computer, and then change the date and time back and make it look like you've got an alibi for being somewhere because the date and times now you couldn't possibly be in the other place because here you were at the computer doing something.
Okay, and
So-
that would explain also the mistaken 1969 that we saw on there, right?
I don't believe that had anything to do with the user changing dates and times. I believe that meant that information was corrupted, and the program tried to interpret it, didn't know what to do, and printed that default date that's, doesn't fit. It's not consistent.
Let me back up. I wasn't trying to imply that somebody did that, but what I was trying to say is that it shows the inexactness of this time thing situation, correct? It's because of corrupted files or somebody changing their time. So you can't just necessarily go by, if you see a picture of a motorcycle, if it says December 25th, doesn't necessarily tell you that that's when the picture was taken, correct?
Correct. It's just that's the date that's indicated.
That's indicated. Now, when I asked you if you knew what date that motorcycle picture was created, she said something about a PK report.
FTK report, the report that generated that picture was from, you would need to look at the report to get the exact date and time.
And do you have that report in your notes, or do you?
It's in an electronic form. I have provided it to the prosecutor, and I believe it was probably you, but I don't have that with me.
Okay. Well, would it surprise you to know if that was the motorcycle picture from when Mr. VanCallis saw it when he bought it off Craigslist? Do you have any reason to believe that's not the case?
I'm not even sure where that picture came from. It was just, they wanted pictures of motorcycles that were on the computer, and that's...
So you don't know if he took it, if he had it since he owned it, or if he took it
I
off
have no idea who
Craigslist
took it,
and
right.
saved it? Okay. The tools that you use for forensic testing, are they, for cell phones and so forth, are they embedded on a laptop, or what are they on?
They're on several different computers, both laptops and tower or desktop computers.
Is there a reason they're not on one? Is it a matter of capacity, or?
Well, what we've found is some of these programs have drivers that communicate with the cell phones, and the drivers, when they're loaded on the same computer, will interfere with each other. So a tool like, for example, Sustine's Data Pilot or Sustine's Secure View, all their drivers always pop up as a Sustine device, even if it's a Motorola phone or an Apple phone. And so whenever you plug an Apple phone in, the other programs are looking for it to load up and say, yes, there's an Apple device just got plugged into the computer. Because you have Secure View on that computer, it no longer pops up as an Apple device. And so now my Self-Bright tool, my XRY tools won't work with that device because the other software is loaded on the computer. So to avoid all those conflicts, we started to put each cell phone program on a separate computer just so there's no conflicts anymore.
So to avoid compatibility problems.
That's exactly it, yes.
Okay. And sir, you indicated that your department maybe spends 40, 50,000 a year on software licenses?
Well, that's the part of being on a task force. My department spends a little over $20,000 a year on licensing and equipment for me. The U.S. Secret Service also contributes, and sometimes it's been as much as $40,000 or $50,000 a year. The Michigan State Police also is a contributor, sending me to training, buying equipment stuff for me. That could be another $20,000 a year. So you see how this quickly becomes a problem for any department to do it on their own.
To do it on their own, absolutely.
Yes.
And are some of the forensic tools that you use, are they authenticated automatically by when you insert the USB drive?
Authenticated, what do you mean?
Well, you indicated this is all proprietary software, correct?
Correct.
So it's, of course, when the companies are charging that kind of money, they don't want people making copies and giving it to somebody, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so
yes, there's a
authentication.
licensed dongle in order to use most of these devices, to make sure that you've paid your licensing for that year for the device.
Okay, and is that similar to USB?
They are. There's a USB dongle, people call them.
Now, you said that most of these phones you saw were Apple iPhones.
Yes, the first
A
day.
few 4S's and a 5C. Is there different software that's used to look at Apple phones versus PC phones?
Yes, you can use the exact same software. They're going to approach the device differently because it's in a different operating system. You know, Apple has their own proprietary iOS system that they use. It's similar to what they use on their computers. It's kind of like a Linux-based software. Then you have, you know, the Android phones. They have their own unique operating system on those devices. So the tools are going to query them differently, and the results we get from those phones are different than like an iPhone. Then, of course, you have other operating systems out there like the Windows phones now, and some companies have their own proprietary operating system that's neither Android nor iPhone nor Windows.
Okay, so like Lantern, is that one that's more primarily for Apple?
Lantern is a software tool that uses both Apple and Android devices. It can examine.
What about Blacklight?
Blacklight is another tool that will do Android and iPhones.
And Mobilize?
Mobilize I don't use any longer, but Mobilize does all phones.
Okay, and then there's of course a bunch of different ones that are like Cellbrite that you mentioned, Final Mobile, etc., that are for
Yes.
Androids. Does the amount of data that you collect or extract differ from the software that you're using or the approach that you're using?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
Different ones support different applications that run on the devices, so we can see differences. What tends to stay common among all the tools is like call history, text messages. It's not very common for those to differ between cell phone tools. But yeah, the applications definitely do differ between tools.
Okay, so you're not trying to tell the ladies and the gentlemen of the jury through your expertise that this is an exact science, right? There's things that are still open interpretation depending on the software that you're using and the information that you get, correct?
It's kind of a tricky area to say exact science.
Okay.
Because unlike computer forensics, cell phone forensics where we're at right now is very similar to the beginning of computer forensics in that we're not being able to freeze the phone in time and never make any changes to it in order to examine it. So with computers, it's very common, you know, we make a copy of it set aside, then if an expert for the other side wants to come and look at it, they're going to make a copy and everything's going to match. The hash values, which is like the digital fingerprint for that drive, the hard drive from the computer, will match and everything stays unchanged. So everybody's happy that it's an exact science and everything's able to be duplicated. With cell phones, it's just not possible. You have to turn the device on in order to examine it. Just by turning it on, you've changed the evidence. Even if it's in airplane mode, there's still going to be changes that are made. So you don't get a matching hash value if you were to hash the contents of the phone. So to say it's an exact science, it's where we're at right now. It's accepted amongst the forensic community. This is the correct way to look at these devices. But again, I'm not comfortable calling it an exact science right now because this is the best we can do with what we have at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. Let me ask you, with its Number Portability Act, or whatever they call that, where you're able to keep your phone number?
Yes.
If you go, so these days, if I live in this area and I have a 586 area code and decide to keep it, move to California, it would still appear as a 586 area code, correct?
You have the ability to do that, I believe, yes.
Okay. And also, likewise, sometimes the area code is reflected in the call, not necessarily the location of where the person is, correct?
Right, it's just the phone number for the phone.
Okay, so just to make it clear, in other words, if I have somebody that has an Oklahoma number and they calls me, they're here in Michigan, and they're calling me, but they have retained their Oklahoma number because they're allowed to do that. It would appear on my phone unless if I have a name program for them as Oklahoma call because of the area code, correct?
True, it's no different than traveling to Denver and using your cell phone with a number from here.
Okay. So that's made that a little bit different than the old days where you could almost tell what carrier somebody had because of the prefix, right?
Oh, that did start in the beginning, you're right.
Okay, and so now you can begin to tell.
No.
And also there's some transition from landlines to cell phones where people have their landline number changed to the cell phone number, et cetera.
Correct, so you'll get rid of the phone lines at home now. Yes.
Okay, so what would have been once a landline could now be your cell phone number, correct?
That's true.
If I may. So as part of this investigation, you looked at April Millsap's telephone, correct?
Yes.
Quite extensively, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you looked at James Millsap's phone, correct?
Yes.
And the computer he had, right?
Yes.
I don't know if this came up in direct. Did you also look at April Millsap's computer?
Yes.
Okay. Did you find any connection at all between April Millsap's phone and her cell phone that tied in any way or any connection with Mr. James
I did not.
VanCallis' phone or cell phone? Nothing. Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Sheik used a term to describe the searches that we were showing, that that's all you have. Is it better to say that's all we chose to show from the result of your examination of his computer?
I believe that's a more accurate portrayal.
Thank you. No further questions.
Just brief follow-up. Wouldn't it make sense that if they did have something that would have been, they would have presented it, right? You were looking for certain things. Anything that you thought might possibly be relative, you brought to their attention, and that's what we looked at, right?
I brought a lot of things to their attention. They chose to go through those things and present what they did today. That's
Okay.
not the extent of what I...
Oh, right, and I
gave them.
never
Right.
implied that was everything that was gotten, but that's everything that we saw doesn't tie anything in, correct?
Now I'm really not following. Okay.
Well, they gave you a scenario of what happened, right?
Yes.
Okay, they gave you a scenario of what their theory of the case was, right?
Okay.
That shoes may be involved and a vehicle may be involved and so forth. So with that vision, you went in there looking for anything that would tie any of that in, would tie April in with James or any of that stuff, with the shoes or that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so you gave them anything that even remotely fell within that purview, correct?
Right, in my opinion, sure.
In your opinion, okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next witness.
Chris Hess.
Sir, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
And what is your name?
Christopher Hess?
H-E-S-S?
Yes.
Thank you. Have a seat. Please speak loud, even when you get off to look whatever you want to be looking at.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, would you indicate where you're employed and what your job is?
I am employed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and I'm a supervisory special agent.
And how long have you been a supervisory special agent?
Since October of 2015.
What position did you hold prior to that?
I was a special agent with the Law&Crime Task Force.
And what now are you a supervisory agent in charge of?
I'm responsible for our surveillance and aviation program.
Where do you work out of? Where's your home office?
It's the Detroit division.
And do you have some particular, special assignments and duties and responsibilities as it relates to looking at cell phone records?
Yes.
And what is that? Can you explain that?
I am a member of what's called the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, or CAST for short. And it's a group of special agents within the FBI who have received training from the cell phone providers on how to interpret their records and how their cellular networks operate.
How long have you been involved in doing that work for the FBI?
I've been involved in working with cell phone information since approximately 2006, and then I obtained the CAST certification in 2010.
How do you obtain a CAST cert? And CAST, again, stands for?
Cellular Analysis Survey Team.
Okay, so we'll use CAST from now on. How do you obtain that certification?
It's approximately 500 hours of training, classroom training, and practical training, and then also the application within case investigations.
So you are put to the test in terms of using that information in cases?
Yes.
Before your certification?
Yes.
And then once you obtain the certification, is there an ongoing process to retain and maintain that certification?
Yes, we do annual retraining, recertification, and that is involved with meeting with the cellular providers to continuously get our education up to date.
In addition to meeting with cellular providers, do you undergo or undertake training with law enforcement as part of your training?
Yes.
Do you actually give training?
Yes.
And who do you train and in what capacity?
I've trained law enforcement at every level, local, state, federal, as well as prosecutors at the federal and state levels, and I've conducted that training across the country.
That was my next question. You only do that in Detroit? You indicated across the country.
Yes, across the country.
Have you testified in court before?
I have.
Have you testified in state district courts?
Yes.
State circuit courts?
Yes.
And have you testified in federal district courts, the trial court and the federal level?
Yes.
Have you been qualified as an expert at all of those levels of courts?
Yes, I have.
In what field are you qualified as an expert previously in court?
Historical cell phone analysis.
Judge, at this point I would move to have the witness qualified in his field.
No objection.
The jury will respect him as an expert, please.
And I guess let's start here. There's a number of different aspects and things you could look at with cell phones. We just had a witness in court talking about looking into contents of a cell phone and their memory. Is that the sort of work that you are here to talk about in court today?
No, it's not.
What sort of analysis did you perform in this case?
My analysis is based on what we call call detail records, and it's the business records that are provided to us by the cell phone company with regard to telephone activity, who you're calling, who you're receiving calls from, and the location where the phone was, what cell sites it used during that call activity.
You use the term cell site. How do people like me call them cell towers?
Yes.
So when you say cell site, you're talking about a cell tower. And explain, if you would, the makeup of a cell tower in terms of having antenna on it. Could you explain that and how a phone interacts with that?
Each of the cell phone providers that are in existence have their cell phone network, which includes cell phone towers spread out all around the geographic area. So for example, if the podium is a cell phone tower, it's broken, it will cover 360 degrees, but it's broken into generally 3 pieces of a pie. And that's in order to be able to handle the amount of usage and the subscribers that are out there. So if that's the cell phone tower, one side of the podium would be directed towards the jury, and it would cover that geographic area. Another side of the podium would cover myself and the judge and provide service in that area. And then the other part of the podium would be directed towards the gallery and provide service there. Each side has its own frequency and slightly different, so that when the phone communicates with that frequency, we know what side of the tower it used at that time.
And you know that because of the records provided to you, is that correct?
Correct.
Talk about, if you would, cell towers in an urban area compared to a more rural area, and the necessity of having additional or less cell towers.
The number of cell towers is generally attributed to the number of subscribers or users that are in an area. So in a city environment, there'd be far more cell phone towers with smaller coverage areas in order to accommodate all the users. If you think about the Verizon Wireless commercial, "Can you hear me now?" The reason why that exists is because there's a lot of cell phone towers in there to provide adequate coverage. When we get out into rural areas, more spread out, fewer people, there's fewer towers and larger cover areas for each tower.
And I guess maybe a question I should have asked earlier before we started talking about the towers. Could you explain what a cell phone actually is and how it communicates with the various guess sides or antenna. Would you call that an antenna, what you described to the jury, like the three sides? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so how does a phone communicate with an antenna?
So a cell phone is tuned to the frequencies that are put off by the antenna, by your cell phone provider. An analogy would be if we have Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, the different companies that are out there, and one company is country music, another company is rock music, another company is classical music. If you are a classical phone, you want to listen to a classical channel, so you're tuned into the frequency of that cell phone tower or that network.
And the sorts of information then that you gather from, say, Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, do you get the same information from those companies for each set of call detail records? So if I've got Sprint and you've got Verizon, and somebody like you is going to look at our phone records, do you always see the same sort of data collected and presented then? In this case, it was a search warrant, right, that gathered some phone records?
Right. We receive it based on some sort of legal process.
And in this case, it was a search warrant?
In this case, a search warrant, yes. And the information that's provided to us is the same for all the companies. It's just reported in different formats based on whatever company we're receiving it from.
All right. And in terms of that similarity, I guess one thing, and I know we're going to get to it later, this is a question I have. Are you able to determine distance from cell phone towers based on looking at the records?
Yes.
Is that information provided by each company?
Not every company, but based on the information that they provide us, which would include where their towers are located, we can make determinations about the distance, the general geographic area covered by that tower.
All right. So the historical part of this analysis comes in looking at records that have already, something happened in the past.
Correct.
In this case, did you have an opportunity to look at a number of phones assisting this investigation?
Yes.
One of them, did you receive phone records for James VanCallis?
Yes.
And in addition to doing the phone records and this analysis here, did you actually go out to the scene?
I did.
Amongst the locations, did you go to the scene where April is identified as having been found?
Yes.
Did you also go to a location, because we're going to see it in some pictures later, where April's phone was located?
Yes.
And did you note those locations?
I did.
And later we're going to see those locations put into some slides and graphics that you helped create. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. I've shown People's Proposed Exhibit 151 through 156 to council, and I'm going to show these to you and ask if you recognize these as slides that you created relating to cell phone records of James VanCallis.
Yes.
I'd move for their admission.
No objection, Your Honor.
Very good.
Let me ask you this too. When a cell phone call is placed and a person is moving in a car, does that call stay with that initial tower the entire time? How does that work in terms of like moving through the state of Michigan up or down I-75, for instance?
Well, it's a mobile network, so there's parameters set within the network that as you make your telephone call, in the call detail records will generate an entry that shows what tower that call initiated on. And then as you move around, the phone and the network are measuring signals from the surrounding cell phone towers. And those signals, as you move away from a tower, get weaker and you get closer to another one, that tower becomes more attractive. And then the network and the whole process would be to hand off to the next cell phone tower. So if you were to make a call in Detroit, Michigan, and show that we initiated on a tower down there and drive all the way to Mackinac, well, you don't lose your call because the network is managing your traffic and keeps handing you off as you move up I-75.
All right. What we're going to be looking at is phone call origination with these calls. Is that accurate in these slides?
Yes.
Either received or placed?
Correct.
All right. Can we show 151? Could you step down and let me see if we have our... Why don't you show the jury, please? We have the phone number at the beginning, at the top. That's James VanCallis' phone number. Would you show us then what we have depicted in this picture?
So this is related to telephone number 810-689-7759. And it represents call activity that happened between 5:39 p.m. and 6:04 p.m. And it's those calls that occurred on the Verizon network and the cell sites that were utilized during that time frame. There's three boxes that note the call activity. And we see that there's cell phone towers that are used in Armada.
Here's this, actually. This helps.
Okay. Here in the center of the screen would be Armada. It also used a tower in Richmond, and then also a tower in Romeo.
So we actually have 4 phone calls in 3 different boxes. Is that what I'm seeing correctly?
Yes.
I know it's a little far away from the last one, but we do have this admitted as a picture, so maybe we could look at it later. Thank you, that helps too. We've got some other things on here. I want to ask you just to orient everybody to what we're seeing. We've got sort of red dots that are popping up on this map. What are those red dots?
So those red dots represent the other Verizon cell phone towers that are in that area depicted on the map.
And how do you know where those other ones are located? How do you know where the towers for Verizon are located?
As part of the legal process, the search warrant, they not only provide us with the call detail records for the phone, but also the cell sites for that market. And that cell site information provides the address as well as the latitude and longitude for the cell site, which then we can put into mapping software to visually depict where the towers are.
All right. Let's start. We'll start on the left side. The first phone call indicates a phone call at 17:55:12, that being military time, 5:55:12. Is that correct?
Yes.
We also have a date. Correct, 7/24/14?
Yes.
And then there's this pie shape. Would you explain what that is meant to depict? Because I want them to understand very clearly what that is.
So using the analogy before with the podium being the cell site, if this telephone call was off to my left, covering the jury, what the pie shape represents is the side of the tower that was used for that telephone call, and simply to illustrate what direction that antenna is facing and that signal is traveling.
And on the red there, it goes out a little ways. Is that meant in this slide to in any way depict the depth and breadth of the coverage for that portion of the cell tower?
No, purely to demonstrate the direction of that signal.
So this pie shape, and we're going to have some different slides later, but that pie shape is meant to direction only.
Yes.
All right, so there's a phone call at 5:55 in a tower in Romeo.
Correct.
All right, can we back out, please? Can we go to the middle one? Now, there are several other things here, and this is what I wanted to, I guess, address. In addition to the other locations on here that we spoke about earlier, we have this yellow square. What is that meant to depict?
That represents the residence for Donald VanCallis.
Donald VanCallis.
Yes.
And that was based on address and information you received in this case?
Yes.
All right. There are 2 phone calls here. Is that correct?
Yes.
What are the times?
17:39:14, 5:39:14 p.m., and then 18:04:34, so 6:04 p.m.
And then again, just for our record, I don't really here can see it, but for our record that we are making, we have a pie shape that's indicating the direction of the antenna that picked up those phone calls.
Correct.
And again, but not the depth and breadth.
Right.
We have 2 other visual, I guess, icons here. What are those?
The red icon represents the location where April Millsap's body was found, and the yellow icon represents the location where her telephone was recovered.
All right, and the date, again, just for our record again, of these 2 phone calls?
July 24th, 2014.
All right, can we back out, please? And then the last phone call on this slide? We have 1 phone call. What was the time for that?
17:39:53 or 5:39 p.m.
And this is, because I can see it kind of under your red pie shape, in the area of Richmond. Is that correct?
Correct.
7/24/2014, a phone call. And again, that is just depicting the directional of the antenna that picked up that phone call.
Yes.
And this is either an origination or the person is either making a phone call or receiving a phone call who's holding that phone.
Right, an incoming or an outgoing call.
Okay. Okay, you could. All right. Could you put up 152? Now this is a different slide with, you have the pie shapes there, but you've got some very different sort of features here. Can you indicate to us what this big pink area and various pink blotches as well as the purple, what is that meant to show?
That represents the actual footprint of those cell sites based on drive testing, going out and actually using equipment to measure the signal and create these amoeba shapes to represent what the actual coverage is for those cell sites.
Did you personally do that?
Yes.
So you went out into this area and actually drove to obtain this information?
Yes.
All right. So now we can kind of see the difference, I guess, because we have this amoeba shape and the pie shape. So the pie shapes, again, are directional indicators, where the amoeba shapes are, in your words, what?
Coverage indicators.
The actual coverage
The actual
indicator.
coverage.
Now, there are 2 phone calls here. There's one at 1739.14 and 1739.53. Would you indicate why you thought it was important to do this drive data?
Because being up in a rural area and seeing the separation between the cell towers, I know that I would expect that they would cover a large area. And reviewing the call detail records, I noticed that there was a call at 5:39 and 14 seconds off the tower in the center. But 40 seconds later, there was a call that hit off of the tower in Richmond. That's a large distance, and in order to accurately depict it, I needed to go out and do the drive testing to see what the actual footprint was, so I could explain why we would have these 2 towers so far apart handling calls in such a short time frame.
The timing of these 2 at 5:39.14, one hitting off an Armada tower and then 5:39.53 hitting off a Richmond tower. Again, those are either receiving or placing phone calls, the timing, is that correct?
Yes.
And this is why I asked you about handing off phone calls here. Is this in any way meant to depict like a person handing off a phone call from one tower to another?
No.
Those are 2 separate phone calls, either placing or receiving.
Correct. 2 separate entries on the call detail records.
All right. And did your drive testing, in fact, confirm or corroborate what you were seeing in the historical call detail records?
Yes, it offered an explanation.
Okay. So it offered an explanation as to why it could have been hitting off those 2 towers so closely to each other when they're so far apart.
Correct.
And in these phone calls, could you just move back one? They're actually depicted right here as well, right? We have this 1739.14 and 1739.53. And then move forward one again, please. This is the actual footprint where those phone calls would have occurred, somewhere in that amoeba shape.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Could we show 153? Could you indicate what this is?
This represents the coverage area for the Verizon cell site number 777 and sector number 1. And it represents that side of the tower and how far out that signal actually travels from that sector.
So in this, and we kind of have this overlaid on a street map. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
We have the indicators you've said before. Could you point to the lower left corner? What is that?
The residence of Donald VanCallis.
And then would you point to the little red circle in the middle? What is that?
This would be the location of the cell site number 777 for Verizon.
All right. And then we have the red square indicating,
The location of April Millsap's body.
and then the yellow again.
That would be the location where April Millsap's cell phone was recovered.
And to be clear again, how did you obtain the information to visually depict the actual coverage area for that sector of that cell tower?
Using the equipment that we have to conduct drive testing or network testing, a painstaking process of driving up and down roads in that area over several days to record the cell signals emitted from those towers.
And after gathering that data, you depict the actual coverage area.
Right, through the software, we're able to process the data that's collected, and it provides us with the visual depiction on a map.
Now I can see in the slide, there's an indication of 2 calls utilizing that sector. We're going to see that in the next picture, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, could you put this one up? This is 154. This is the same tower that was just depicted in the previous picture,
Yes.
and the same sector. Now it's a little closer, so that little tiny pie shape in the previous picture is a little bit bigger in this one. Is that right?
Right, it's a zoomed in.
All right. And this reflects the 2 phone calls that were written at the top of the previous slide. Is that accurate?
Yes.
What are the timing of those 2 phone calls?
On July 24, 2014, there was a call at 18:14 and 55 seconds, or 6:14 p.m. And then a second call at 18:16:56, or 6:16 p.m.
And the date again, July 24, 14.
Correct.
And this is the information that came from the phone records related to James VanCallis' phone.
Right, this is all off of business records kept by Verizon.
Okay. I think we've already covered what the other icons are in this picture. Could you zoom back out, please, or unzoom it? And just for clarity's sake and for the record, we have these other red dots. Those indicate other cell tower sites out in that area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you show 155? Now this is a little bit of a different view. 2 slides ago we had this pink image, and this looks a little bit magenta or maroon. Is that right?
Yes.
Is it depicting the exact same information, just a little bit different color?
Yes, it's just taking that information from the Street View type map, and this is overlaid on Google Earth, so the color is processed slightly different.
All right. So this is the same exact sector,
Yes.
same tower,
Yes.
same physical geographic location, adjacent to Armada and south of Burrville and
Correct.
southeast of Allenton.
Yes.
There's another band, there's a yellow band in there. Could you indicate to the jury what that is meant to depict?
So in addition to the tower and sector information that's provided by Verizon, there's an extra layer of data that Verizon can provide to us if requested, and it's called range to tower. And that information shows us within the records, it used this tower, it used this sector, but that device was also this far from the tower. So we're able to narrow down an area where the phone was at the time of that interaction with the network.
And you said range to tower, that's what RTT, I'm assuming stands for up there, where you say Verizon RTT data?
Yes.
And in this case, it indicates approximately 0.6 miles from the cell site. Point out again the cell site, please.
Cell site is right down here.
All right. And this yellow band, though, is not a single line. I mean, 0.6, if you just drew an arc with 0.6 and used a compass or something, it wouldn't be a thick band. It would be a single line. Is that right?
Yes.
So how do we account for a line? Or not having a line, but actually a band?
So I take the 0.6 miles and I draw that line based on the training and information provided to us by Verizon, including their engineers. We build in a buffer of about 1/10 of a mile, 2/10 of a mile on either side of that 0.6 miles, which then gives us that something like the yellow band depicted here.
Okay. And then we're going to look at a little bit of a closer view, and there's going to be another location in the next view. I'm going to ask if you're familiar with that as part of this case, 156. Is this just a closer view of the previous slide?
Yes.
Now, instead of the red box, we've got an actual indication of crime scene. Is that the exact same location?
Yes.
Let me take this from you. Do you recognize this from actually being out there as part of the Macomb Orchard Trail?
Yes.
Do you recognize this area as Armada?
Yes.
And the call activity, what are the times?
6:14 p.m. and 6:16 p.m.
Those are the same 2 phone calls depicted in the last 2 or 3 slides?
Yes.
In addition to the crime scene being within that band, there's another place within that band. You've got Armada indicated, but you've also got a location, a business in town. What is that?
The Marathon gas station?
So that area of the Marathon station is within the band.
Yeah.
Because I want to be very clear also with the jury and with your testimony, with the data you have, you can't say these two phone calls took place at any individual point within that band. Is that right? I mean, can you explain that to them?
That's correct. It's not so precise to say that that telephone was right in the position where I'm standing. What this represents is that at that time in that interaction with the network, that phone was somewhere within that area covered by the yellow band.
Okay. And I just want to make that clear. You can't say with your data that it's exactly at the Marathon or exactly at that dot that you wrote, like Armada, maybe that's the City Hall, or actually at crime scene.
Correct.
Those are illustrated to indicate that they're within that band.
The geographic area that the phone was in.
All right, you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. As part of your work, you went out to the scene, you indicated to several different locations, right?
Yes.
You actually drove at least all of those sectors. Did you do additional driving out in the northern part of Macomb County?
Yes, in order to get that amoeba shape, we have to branch out far enough to get the influence of the other towers in the area. So it's quite a large area to cover.
And in addition to James VanCallis' phone, did you also look at records obtained as a result of search warrants from a number of other individuals?
Yes.
And that information has been provided by you previously?
Yes.
I have one more, Judge. One of the other individuals' phones you looked at was Donald VanCallis, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was that last question?
I asked him if you looked at Donald VanCallis' phone records.
Thank you, sir.
And I should make sure I'm making that clear. Did you actually perform forensic examinations on the phone data themselves in this case?
No.
In other cases or maybe other situations, have you been asked to do that sort of work?
Yes.
But not this case?
Correct.
That's all I have. I will pass the witness, Your Honor.
Just 1 second. May we approach?
We're going to take our lunch. We'll see you at 1:30. Have a good lunch.
All rise for the jury. Oh.